about the noise from the wind that's blowing, but today we're going to do a light pruning on this Natchez white Crape Myrtle. Midwinter to late winter is the best time to prune these while they're dormant. And I'm going to take these prunings and take them over to my potting bench and make some cuttings that will stick to root them up to make new Crape Myrtle plants. As you can see, there are some straggly limbs on this that really need to come off. Crape Myrtles basically put out all of their blooms in the top of the plant and make a really gorgeous accent to your yard. I'll show you a few of the clippings that I'm going to take. As you can see further down on the trunk, there's one here that is just shooting straight out to the side that is really not going to add to the beauty of the plant. So I'm going to take him off, and I'm also going to look for branches that are running off the main trunks diagonally. And in this case, you can see where this branch is actually rubbing against the trunk, which is not a good thing to have. So I'm going to take him off also. And then I'm just going to clean up these little side shoots so I can keep the trunk of the plant relatively bare, so that as it reaches, it'll give it that added beauty and eliminate all of the mess down towards the bottom. Also at the base of this plant are some what we call suckers growing out of the base of the plant. They will also make good cuttings because they are fresh growth. And fresh growth really is the best pieces of the plant to take for cuttings. So let me remove those branches that I showed you, and I'll take you over to the potting bench and I'll show you how we make those cuttings and put them in some dirt to root. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe button, and also ring the bell. That way you won't miss any more of my upcoming videos. Okay, here we are at the potting bench, and I wanted to show you the mixture that I use for my rooting medium. It is a combination of 1 part potting soil and 2 parts sand. The perlite in the potting soil will help retain the moisture that these cuttings are going to need to root, and the sand will allow for great drainage. So you really have to have a combination of both of them to ensure proper rooting. Laying next to my pot is the suckers that I took off. They're quite thin, but their green growth is going to be very beneficial to rooting. And over here are the larger branches that I took off of the plant, and we'll clean them up and take some cuttings from them also. Now with these larger branches, you want to make sure you have a really strong pair of pruning shears. In fact, I had to use a pair of loppers to cut them off of the main trunks, and I might also have to use them to cut these larger pieces. So the process of cutting into pieces is basically the same for all types of hardwood cuttings that you take. You want to find nodes on the plant, which are fairly visible. If I can get this to zoom in properly. This is a node right here, and there are nodes along the branch as you go up. So what we are going to do is take our pruning shears, and we're going to cut just below this node without disturbing it much, because those nodes contain the hormones that will allow the plant to root. So there we have our first cut just below the node. And we're going to go up 6 to 8 inches and find another node, which would be right here. And as you can see, it already has the makings of a little growth where the leaves will grow from. So we're going to go above that node about an inch and snip him off. So there we have our first cutting. You have to make sure when you stick these cuttings in the rooting medium that you put the larger end down, because that is the direction that they were growing on the plant, and you have to keep that same direction when you stick the cutting. So the bottom cutting is just below that bottom node, and I leave about an inch on the top, because if for some reason these cuttings were to get mixed up or I dropped a whole bunch of them, that longer length on the top is a surefire way of determining top from bottom. So I know that the top has that extra 1 inch. That will eventually die off as the plant roots up and begins growth. So that's not going to affect the growth of the cutting whatsoever. So now that our cutting is ready to go in the rooting mixture, we will take the base and we will dip it in a little bit of rooting hormone, shake off the excess so that the base of the cutting is covered with rooting hormone. Actually, these will root pretty much on their own, but the rooting hormone will give us a higher percentage of success in rooting. It will stimulate those hormones within that cutting to go ahead and start putting out more roots. So once we have the hormone powder on, we will bring it over to our potting medium and just insert it about 3 inches down. We'll water it in, and within a matter of months, we'll have a beautiful, small, not as white Crape Myrtle plant. I did want to show you the hormone rooting powder that I use. If you click the More button in the description of this video, you will be able to have a link to go directly to purchase this rooting hormone powder. It's readily available at any of your online stores or in your local gardening centers. You don't necessarily have to use this one. They basically all do the same job. It also comes in a liquid form that you can mix, but you use whichever you prefer. So now I'll go ahead and do the rest of these cuttings, and I'll be back to you as soon as I get my pot full of cuttings, and I'll show you how I water them in and place them out of the sun so they can go ahead and do their thing. I did want to show you one of the larger cuttings that I took. This will root just as well as the thinner type, the first year's growth. This is probably a second year's growth, but as you can see by the base, the node is very visible. I cut it at an angle in order for to expose more of the cutting to the rooting medium. And you can also see that there is plenty of green inside of the trunk of this cutting. That's a sure indicator that this cutting is viable, dormant, and ready to put out new growth as soon as the roots develop. So there we have it. 30 Crape Myrtle cuttings tucked away nicely in their new home of sand and potting soil. One thing I always do is tag my cuttings with the variety, and I also, in the lower right hand corner of the tag, put the date that I stuck them. That'll give me a real good earmark on how long it took these to root. Normally hardwood cuttings can go a month or two before they show any signs of growth, but since they are in their normal environment outside, I put these in the shade, their internal clock will start ticking, and when the alarm goes off with more sun and warmer weather, they will begin the rooting process and putting on new growth. I've set them on the shady side of my greenhouse until they start showing signs of growth, and then I'll move them over into the sun and keep them watered. And as you can see, I have other cuttings neighboring them. I have close to 250 Leland cypress cuttings here, stuck in the same type of rooting medium. I also have oak leaf hydrangea, panicle hydrangea, some double play pink spirea, and they're all outside. Since they're dormant, they're in their natural environment, and like I say, they'll put on growth. So let's give these guys a little bit of water. Water enough so that the water will reach down to the base of the cuttings. And basically, since they're outside, this is a stick it and forget it process. Unless, of course, we don't get any rain, then you want to check your cuttings. If they look like they're drying out a little bit, go ahead and give them a drink. You want a little bit of moisture down in that soil to also help promote the root growth. Well, that wraps up another video on our couple of acres by Plant Man by Clayton. I sure hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day, and may God bless you all.